Keon Sab has transferred from Michigan to Alabama. So the interesting piece here is that this information was not Keon Sab texting somebody or something like that. This actually came from the Alabama NIL. I think it's called Alabama or something like that. But kind of strange to see an NIL collective breaking the news that somebody has enrolled in classes for their school. So obviously Michigan fans are going on and on about this and saying tampering, they're cheating. Obviously Ohio State fans are saying, no, sanctions are just coming and he's getting out and doesn't want to be there anymore. And there's other teams that say, look, he's hired an entire new defensive coaching staff. Maybe he just doesn't like those guys. I think all are viable possibilities. Unfortunately, we don't have Keon Sab going out and doing interviews telling us exactly what happened, but it is very, very interesting, and I'd like to get your take on it first, Zach. Just from all of this stuff going on, do you believe was Alabama tampering to get Keon Sab to Alabama?
I don't know. I feel like I've heard a lot of things, seen a lot of smoke. There are some things that make it seem like maybe Alabama pulled the trigger a little too early. At the same time, it's hard. Like a player doesn't transfer unless they know where they're going, especially if you're a player as good as Keon Sab, right? Like you
Right.
want to know where you want to go. Especially in the world, because if you go in the transfer portal and you don't know what you're doing, there's a very real chance you're not going to get picked up, or you're going to go a tier or two lower in terms of like D2 or FCS or. So I think all of the claims of like, well, how could he enroll in 4 days? I'm like, well, I think it's very easy to be like, all right, what are my options? I'm going to enter the transfer portal and I'm going to be done. I mean, we've seen it with other players like Caleb Downs. I don't think it was 4 days, but I think it was a pretty short turnaround. Several other players, a very short turnaround. Would I be surprised if it's tampering? No. I mean, I think that's SEC teams have been skirting the rules forever. So,
Yep.
An SEC team tampering with an NCAA that does nothing. Oh, gee, I wonder. But again, if they are, there's a part of me that's like, play by the rules. There's another part of me that's like, well, if the NCAA is going to do nothing about it, like, is it really tampering-ish? Like it is and it isn't. I don't know. I think the optics are not great, but then I'm like, well, I think the bigger issue is there's not a lot of concrete consequences that the NCAA is willing to put into play. So I think that's honestly, if that's the bigger thing is does the NCAA care? And if they don't, then I almost, maybe this is cynical of me, but I'm almost done caring.
Right. Jeff makes a good point. He says, where is the proof of tampering? And I think that's the biggest thing is like, there is no proof. But like, if we only establish tampering to when there's proof, like, then nobody would ever tamper. You know what I'm saying? Like, did we have a bunch of proof that Tennessee was tampering? Did we have a bunch of proof that Florida State was tampering? Maybe some, but so I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong, Jeff. I actually agree that like we need proof in order to say something for sure happened. But I don't think it's wild for Michigan fans to say it's likely that he was tampered with. For them to come out and say he was tampered with and that's all it ever was, yeah, that's not correct because we don't have the exact proof of that. But to say like, hey guys, there's something fishy's going on here, then I can see where they're coming from. Connor, you feel the same way? What do you think?
Well, I just think it's hilarious that Michigan's complaining about cheating. I mean, I know that's all.
I knew somebody was going to make that joke of it.
It's just like, come on, man. And I also think it's hilarious that Alabama's getting involved with a tampering case after what went down with Caden Proctor in Iowa, we had to report this whole thing because one of our recruiting coordinators had texted him, "Keep your head up." So
Yeah.
if that's considered tampering, then oh my goodness, I promise you on everything that Alabama was tampering. Will it ever be caught? Like Zach was saying, probably not. But and I'm to that point too where I'm like, who knows? I don't even care anymore. But to me, there's no doubt. There's just no doubt.
Yeah. Jeff makes another good point. I agree. The SEC has always had the church handshake deals. Yes. Them and Clemson building their in God's name, image, and likeness. I always thought that was a funny quote by him, especially since their NIL money was coming from that church, which, we could also say, where's the proof on that? But, seemed likely. Blue by 90 put out a tweet, and this got a lot of traction today. Unfortunately, I don't have it loaded up to my computer, but essentially the tweet says Keon Sab just committed to Alabama after being in the portal for a whopping total of 87 hours. So that means theoretically he A, entered his name into the portal, B, was contacted by most likely hundreds of coaches, possibly, but again, where's the proof? C, weighed the pros and cons of each school, D, then committed to that school being Alabama. If you have all that happen in a matter of less than 4 days, I have some oceanfront property in Iowa I would like to sell you. Connor, you have oceanfront property out there in Iowa?
Oh, plenty, man. I got plenty.
Great. I'm happy for you. No, I mean, and like, that's the thing. Like, Blue My 90 does make some good points here. Like, can you really accomplish all of that in 87 hours? I mean, you can, but like, does it make it easier to be talking with somebody first before, like, again, I don't think it is realistic to say this was 100% tampering and there's no other excuse for it. But at the same time, like, you can't just say 100% it was. Zach, you look like you got some thoughts.
Well, I saw that tweet earlier, and I want to be careful because my Ohio State glasses are I'm very tempted to put them on.
Right?
I just think if you're under the impression that Keon Sab was evaluating 100 different coaches and like their offers, I think you're a bit naive. He just won a national championship. You're not going to consider 100 different schools. You're going to consider 5 to 10 at most. And like, if you get a call from Alabama, I don't care if Saban's not on the sideline anymore. There's still going to be a top 10 program. Like, so I think that's where I'm like, the whole tampering thing, I totally can see it happening. And like the time frame, I would agree 87 hours is very, very short. But where I would really push back on the accusations is understand that Keon probably had guys in his corner saying like, these are the schools you should be looking for.
Right.
Like, this is not like recruiting where you're like taking a year or two to figure out like, who do I have the best relationship with? Like, he already has established relationships with coaches. He already knows different cultures because he's done the recruiting process. Like, I just think that it's funny. I think I thought of this topic and wanted specifically to react to that tweet, and you just said it. So I'm like, I don't like it because I think Ohio State fans we did this when our guys transfer out.
Right.
But it's like Julian Fleming took a longer time. But it's like he had a plan probably in his head. Is like, I'm not going to be a starter here next year. Who are viable options? And it's probably not Utah State, right? That's not one of his options. He's thinking Power 5, big name school, preferably SEC or Big Ten. Well, that's like 6 to 10 schools. And he went with one that he was familiar with. So I don't know all of Keon Sab's. I don't know if Alabama recruited him out of high school a lot.
He was committed to Clemson.
Okay.
And then he decommitted from there to go to Michigan.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, he had at least some ties down south.
Right.
And so I don't know what his relationship was like with Kalen DeBoar. I don't know what his relationship is with the current out. But I think I would just encourage everybody who wants to signal tampering when their player gets poached, just to understand there easily could be tampering. But then again, I appreciated your point about Caden Proctor. Like, it was tampering because someone reached out to him as a friend, which is stupid, by the way. Like, that would be considered tampering.
Right.
But like, that's
100%.
so like, sorry, I my inner rage monster is coming out because it's just coming back. The NCAA is stupid. And that's all I want to say.
That's something we could definitely all agree with. All SEC, Big Ten, Michigan, Ohio State. The NCAA sucks, and we hate that.
Wow.
What do you think, Connor?
Man, I couldn't have said it better, but I don't know. I think when you look at it from a broad scope here, every team tampers. I'm not going to lie, to some degree. Like I said, if what we see from the Caden Proctor situation is seen that way, then it's likely that every player who has an idea of who they're going to talk to before even putting their name into the portal. That's just the way I see it. I could be completely wrong, but I just think we live in a world now where a lot of people aren't going to report things, and they're going to get away with a lot of things because it's easy if you just keep your mouth shut. So,
yeah, for me, like, that's the biggest thing is, like, every team is tampering somehow, and the smart teams do it the way that they won't get caught. Like, I made a post earlier today on Twitter, and this is basketball, so forgive me. I know we're on our football show, but Bruce Thornton at Ohio State, his mom is currently fielding calls from, like, coaches at other programs right now. And, like, she doesn't want to hear from that. She wants to watch him play out the rest of his year at Ohio State. And, then maybe they'll think of it later and he'll decide to enter the portal or not. Well, this kid, I mean, it was even before Chris Holtmann was even fired. Like, there were coaches reaching out to his mom saying, hey, don't let Bruce forget we recruited him. Don't let Bruce forget. Like, there would be a spot here for him. Like, I mean, I don't have those quote words, but them. Right. Like, I think that would be hilarious to do that personally, but like, that kind of stuff goes on all the time, whether coaches are talking to the mom or recruiting directors are talking to the uncles or whatever, because there are ways to talk to these kids other than just, texting them up front. Meanwhile, we have 19 and 20-year-olds that are just trying to get prepared to play the next game. And if their coach gets fired, then it's like, what's going to happen? Or in this case with Keon Sab, if your coach leaves and you have a brand new coach and brand new coaches on defense, you're just trying to get to learn your coaches. But at the same time, you might have people talking to your mom or talking to your uncle and saying, hey, Keon could be a star player at Alabama, or Keon should come back to Clemson or whatever else. And that's my main thing is, like, we need to do what's best for the players. And what's best for the players is to let them make their own decisions in a good way that is knowledgeable and, doesn't require, them to make decisions too quickly, but it is what it is. So thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.